Sorry, I had to throw away all of Leticia's stuff. They were getting in the way of my happiness with Joseph. He even helped me do it, didn't you, Joseph? Coming back from a week-long business trip, I found that my sister and my husband had thrown away all my belongings. Seeing my sister and husband being physically affectionate like lovers disgusted me beyond words.
So let's get a divorce.
I received the divorce papers from my husband and asked my sister, "Are you sure about this, sis?" This all started a few months ago. My name is Leticia. I've been living with Joseph for a year now. Joseph and I met at a party and got married. I always loved my job and had told Joseph before we got married that I planned to continue working. When Joseph and I tied the knot, I had just been promoted to a responsible position at work and was also in charge of training newcomers, which was another reason I wanted to keep working. At first, Joseph also seemed to want to continue working. However, when we disclosed our salaries before getting married, it turned out I earned more. Then Joseph suddenly suggested,
"I'll become a house husband."
I immediately said, absolutely not. And for good reason. Joseph's place was always a mess when he lived alone. He never cleaned or washed the dishes, leaving the sink always piled high with dirty dishes. The bathroom was in a state I wouldn't even want to use. From the beginning of our relationship, I was the one who had to clean up after him. Plus, I had never even seen Joseph cook. He was hardly skilled at household chores, so when I objected to the idea of him becoming a house husband, he made a sulky face. He brought up the house husband idea several times afterward, but each time I firmly said no. Despite occasional arguments with work-averse Joseph, our life was fairly ordinary. But for the past 6 months, my sister Carolina had been visiting us too often, and it was wearing me out. She lives nearby at our parents' house, but frequently drops by our place. Although she's unemployed, she falsely tells people she earns advertising revenue by posting on social media. She's just an impossible person to deal with. She would come to our house almost every day, eat dinner, and then leave. I couldn't get comfortable with that. She's here again. When I come home from work and hear joyful conversation from the living room, it only makes me feel more drained. When I go to the living room, my sister and Joseph are sitting close together on the 2-seater sofa. My sister waves at me saying, "You're back." Lately, these two seem to be getting unusually close. Is it because they've been drinking? Joseph!
Carolina.
Hearing them call each other like that irritates me. Joseph and my sister seem to be enjoying some appetizers, so I decide to cook my own dinner. As I start cooking, Joseph says,
Leticia, I got us some appetizers."
As I prepare my own meal, I ask irritably, why? Joseph responds with a dismissive laugh.
"I'm hungry, and your cooking isn't good, so I bought appetizers."
What? You can't even cook, and you're calling my food bad? When I respond angrily, pan in hand, my sister chuckles and lightly taps Joseph's shoulder. "Don't be mean, you'll hurt Leticia's feelings if you tell the truth."
"As a husband, I'm educating my wife. Your cooking is terrible. It's inedible. But I'm hungry, so go get some appetizers."
Joseph's face is flushed red from drinking. My sister is laughing so hard she's practically choking, and I put the frying pan away. I quietly put away the ingredients I've taken out and head for the door. I've just come home, and as I try to leave again, Joseph yells,
"Hurry up! Be back in 5 minutes."
Hearing my sister's laughter in the background makes my skin crawl. I leave the house and make it to the grocery store. On my way back, carrying potential appetizers and my own substitute for dinner, I realize I'm crying. The frustration is overwhelming. Joseph always eats my cooking without a word of complaint. Sometimes he'd even say, "This is delicious," while eating it. I learned to cook from Mom, and even my sister knows my cooking isn't bad. But to come home tired from work, cook earnestly for Joseph, and then be told it's bad was truly heartbreaking. I return home, let out a soft sigh, and head toward the living room. Joseph and my sister are sitting on the two-seater sofa, red-faced and snuggled up, apparently having drunk too much. My sister even has her head resting on Joseph's shoulder, looking blissful. With a cooled heart, I take out my phone and snap a photo of their sleeping faces. The next morning, my sister laughs and says, "Sorry for staying over. Didn't mean to. Wouldn't want Leticia to get suspicious, considering how well Joseph and I are getting along." I reply with a smile. It's okay. I serve breakfast to my sister and later to Joseph, who wakes up after her. Joseph casually asks,
"What about yesterday's appetizers?"
"They're in the fridge. Feel free to have some," I say as I serve breakfast. "Sorry you have to eat my bad cooking all the time."
"Huh? Did I say that?"
"You sure did, Joseph. Leticia looked really upset."
"Well, forgive me. I was drunk."
"It's fine. Whatever." I speak flatly and say I'm off to work now, and leave the two behind as I exit the house. Once I step out of the front door, I stop the recording on my mobile phone. I've decided to record all conversations between Joseph, my sister, and me from now on. I honestly don't want a divorce. I just want to kick my sister out and go back to my normal life with Joseph. But my suspicions about Joseph have grown so much that there's no turning back. Then I get assigned a week-long business trip. I'm going with a younger male colleague, traveling far away. It's his first business trip and he looks pretty nervous. I feel the responsibility to be strong, but I can't help but worry about what's going on at home. Will my sister make a move on Joseph while I'm gone? To ease my concerns, I decide to spend some saved up money. Once the week-long trip is safely over, my colleague and I take a moment to relax before reporting back to the office. When I got back home after picking up a certain item, I could sense my sister's presence again. I sighed, not feeling like going into the living room right away. Instead, I walked into my bedroom and was shocked. Everything of mine was gone. My favorite dresser that I bought when I lived alone, all the clothes in my walk-in closet, nothing was there. Going into the living room, I found Joseph and my sister sitting closely together on the love seat. "What's going on here?" I shouted. My sister chuckled and said, "Sorry, I threw all your stuff out. It was in the way of Joseph and me getting happily married. Joseph even helped me throw it out, right?" My sister playfully touched the tip of Joseph's nose, and he grinned lazily. Watching the two of them touch each other like lovers, I felt chills running down my arms.
"That's why I'd like you to divorce me,"
Joseph said, casually handing me the divorce papers. Such an incredibly selfish pair. While I was at work, my sister had the nerve to let herself into my home. And my husband, accepting her and going so far as to cheat with my own sister, was beyond belief. Fuming with boiling anger, I decided to make them regret their choices. I stared at the pre-filled divorce papers and then looked at my sister. "Hey sis," I said, noticing her genuinely happy smile. "Are you sure about this? Marrying Joseph, is it really what you want?" "Huh? Of course! Joseph and I are in love. Sorry, Leticia, but your sister is just more attractive than you. I know it must be tough to have your husband stolen, but don't worry, I'll take good care of him."
"Leticia, I'll make sure Carolina is happy, so feel free to go ahead with the divorce."
I couldn't believe it. He had the gall to say that, after promising to make me happy when we got married, and then letting it come to this? As I finished filling out the divorce papers, barely holding back my laughter, Joseph declared he wanted the house as part of the asset division. So I graciously handed over the house and moved back into my parents' home until I could find a new place. My sister hadn't told my parents anything. When I explained the situation, they hugged me, tears in their eyes. "You don't have to think of her as your sister anymore." Her warmth had me breaking down in tears before I knew it. I heard from Joseph, who apparently submitted the divorce papers the same day. He even included a smiling photo of my sister and him, confirming my belief that I'm better off divorcing someone like him. A few days later, I visited the house I used to share with Joseph, accompanied by my lawyer. It was a day off, so both Joseph and my sister were home, which was convenient. When I suddenly showed up with my lawyer, they were shocked. But once I mentioned it was about money, they mistakenly thought they might get something in the asset division, so they let us in without hesitation. That's when I handed Joseph and my sister something I'd picked up on the way back from a business trip. Inside the brown envelope were photos of Joseph and my sister caught in the act of their affair. The pictures captured them kissing, with the curtains left wide open. I didn't know what Joseph and my sister would get up to while I was away for a week, so I'd use some of my savings to hire a private investigator to gather evidence. I even brought out my sister's diary that she left at our parents' house. It had entries about her sweet days with Joseph, starting about 6 months ago around the time. She started hanging around our house all the time. While I calmly laid out the evidence and began explaining what was from when, my sister shouted, "Enough already! Why is Leticia trying to ruin my happy future with Joseph? I get that Joseph is a catch, but aren't you ashamed for gathering all this evidence?" she asked. "I'm not ashamed. The one who should be ashamed for getting caught in photos like these is you. So now that we have all this evidence, I'll be requesting $20,000 in damages from each of you." $20,000? That's absurd. My sister mumbled something upon hearing the amount, but Joseph stood his ground unfazed. Turns out my sister was still lying to Joseph, claiming she had a job earning ad revenue from social media posts while being unemployed. What was she planning on achieving by marrying him with such a lie? Though I was disgusted, when I announced I'd be taking the compensation, Joseph seemed to be relying on my sister's supposed income.
"It should be no problem coming up with $40,000 between the two of us, right, Carolina?"
he said. My sister gave a wry smile and nodded, "Yeah." From there, it was up to the lawyers. After discussions on how the compensation would be paid, it was agreed that both would pay the total amount of $40,000 in one lump sum. We set the payment deadline, and that was the end of the meeting for the day. "As for you, sis, take care," I said, emphasizing my final point. All my sister could do was give another wry smile. A few weeks later, I got a call from someone asking if I knew Joseph's whereabouts. When I asked if they were still living in their old house, the person told me it was empty. I had received the full compensation from Joseph and my sister right away, so I hadn't given much thought to what happened next. But now this person was saying that not telling them where Joseph was could cause me trouble. My parents had mentioned cutting ties with my sister, but I figured Mom might know where she was. Sure enough, only Mom knew. Turns out my unemployed sister couldn't afford to pay me the compensation. She had turned to our parents for help, but they refused to lend her even $1. In the end, she and Joseph had to give up their house to make the payment. I did wonder why Joseph, who had an income, was in this situation, but the person who wanted to know Joseph's whereabouts eventually showed up at my house, so I ended up guiding them to where Joseph was living. I was shocked when I saw Joseph in my sister's new place. It was an astonishingly old apartment. The outdoor stairs were rusted, and the walls were in bad shape. I rang the doorbell of the apartment number Mom had given me. I announced who I was and that I brought someone who needed to speak to Joseph. My sister opened the door, looking puzzled. "Who is this?" My sister asked, eyeing the bear-like figure standing behind me.
"I've lent money to Joseph,"
the man said. Yes, this was the money lender to whom Joseph had borrowed money during his bachelor days. Joseph had a fondness for gambling and had racked up a significant debt when he was single. Even though he worked hard to pay it off, it seemed like he was only covering the interest. I knew about Joseph's debt when I married him and had been striving in my career to pay it off in one go. "I had no idea Joseph had debt!" My sister screamed, which brought Joseph running from the back of the house.
"You're the one who told him where we live,"
my husband shouted at me, to which I sighed and responded, "Well, if I didn't, they might have come after me for the money." "Why didn't you tell me Joseph had debt, Leticia?" When Joseph and I were getting a divorce, I made sure to confirm that it was okay several times. At that, my sister burst into tears. "This is just terrible. I don't have money, I don't have a job, and Joseph has debt? This isn't how it's supposed to be."
"Tears are fine, ma'am. Now, please pay the overdue amount."
When the bear-like moneylender took a step forward, my sister let out a scream. Joseph apologized deeply, shouting,
"I'm sorry. Actually, I quit my job. Before divorcing Leticia, I saw that Carolina was making money off from social media ads. So, I thought she was well off, and I decided to become a house husband. That's why I don't have money now."
"What do you mean you quit your job?" My sister slammed her hand on Joseph's desperately apologizing head. Joseph was equally mad at my sister, shouting,
"It's your fault for deceiving me."
Listening to their fight, it became clear that Joseph had quit his job before their marriage, relying on my sister's money. My sister, too, had been hiding her jobless state from Joseph, who now felt deceived. But none of that mattered to the moneylender.
"Shut up, both of you. Just pay whatever you can right now."
Joseph rushed into the house and handed the moneylender whatever cash he could find.
"Not much, but it'll have to do. I'll be back, so don't run away."
The moneylender grumbled as he left. Just as I was about to leave, I heard my sister's pleading voice. "Hey, Leticia, you're listening, right? Dad and Mom have cut ties with me. I'm struggling even to afford daily meals. You get it, right? Can you please lend me some money?" Frustrated by my sister's audacity, I turned around and said, "Absolutely not. Enjoy your debt-filled life," and walked away, hearing her sobbing in the background. Later, I heard Joseph and my sister didn't get divorced. However, they were frequently begging our parents for money. Apparently, my parents were dismissing their request, But it was clear that both Joseph and my sister were really struggling financially. Despite hating work, they were now juggling multiple jobs, working day and night. As for me, I moved out and am thoroughly enjoying living alone. Worrying about whether your spouse is betraying you, wondering what my sister and her husband are up to. Living without those concerns is incredibly freeing. During this time, a junior coworker I traveled with for business confessed their feelings for me. They said they had become attracted to me while working together. Touched by the genuine feelings of my junior coworker, I decided to start dating them. They mentioned wanting a serious relationship leading to marriage, and we've agreed to introduce each other to our parents soon. This time around, I'm hoping for a happy marriage.